We've got big Disney Parks news this week as the top stories for the week include Shanghai Disneyland reopening and Disney Springs reopening. There are also stories about Disney Plus shows and a new Star Wars movie. Stay tuned and I'll break it all down. Well, hello there. My name's Jeremy and welcome back to Freeform Disney, where I talk about all aspects of Disney, from the animated movies to the theme parks to Star Wars, Marvel, and Pixar, and the TV shows, and everything else in between. And that is why it's Freeform. And keep coming back every day for new daily content. If you're not subscribed yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Now it's that time of the week once more, so on to this week's biggest Disney news stories. Our top story of the week is the reopening of Shanghai Disneyland. We just got this news in recently, and we found out that Shanghai Disneyland will reopen on May 11th. Now, the outer areas outside the park itself, say the stores and the restaurants, actually opened back in early March and part of the phased reopening Disney's been doing. But the park itself has remained closed up till now. But Monday, that's all going to come to a change. Now, as I've talked about before in the news in this channel, I've talked about some of the changes that are happening to some of the other parks in China and what they're doing in order to enact social distancing and keep people safe. So what will Disney specifically be doing? Well, here's what we know so far. First off, we know that when you come in, you're going to go into a tent where you're going to have your temperature checked. The tent's important because that way you keep out of the direct sunlight and they can control it a little bit better and get a little more accurate of a reading. Now, if your temperature is over 99.3 degrees Fahrenheit, or 37.3 Celsius, you will be denied entry. The capacity of the park is going to be limited to 30%. Now, that's per the Chinese government, and that means 24,000 people for Shanghai Disneyland, as opposed to the 80,000 capacity it normally has. But they're not going to be starting at 24,000 on Monday. As Bob Chapek went ahead and said recently, "We are going to open up far below that to have our training wheels on. But in a few weeks, the park will ramp up to the new limit." This really doesn't prove as a pretty big surprise at all here. We expected them to start low, and we don't know exactly what those numbers are as to how much below the 24,000 they're starting, and exactly how long they will wait till they get to the 24,000. If I get anything more on that, obviously I will go ahead and let you know next week. And we'll certainly have the reports of what's happened here in the first week of Shanghai Disneyland being reopened. Now, how are they controlling some of that? Well, Bob Chapek went ahead and gave us some more information there because he said, "We will take a phased approach with limits on attendance using an advanced reservation and entry system, controlled guest density using social distancing, and strict government-required health and prevention procedures. These include the use of masks, temperature screenings, and other contact tracing and early detection systems." So in terms of some of what they're doing for limiting the attendance and working on their reservation and entry system, we know that they have the tickets for Shanghai Disneyland being specific for the day. So you can't just grab a general Shanghai Disneyland ticket and show up. It must be a ticket specifically for whatever day it is you're coming in. That helps them keep that cap of numbers that they're trying to go for. We also know they're doing work on making sure that the different areas of the park are limited and how many people are in there. When it comes to the different rides, they're going ahead and controlling those for capacity. So they're going to be much lower, not the 100% capacity you could have for the different rides. That includes things like empty rows in between different groups when they're in a ride. Or if they're just a small car for whatever ride you're on, well, then only one group total is going to be able to be in that small car. And things like the queue lines will have markings on the ground to maintain social distancing. You've seen a little bit of that before on the channel, where I had some earlier pictures of what they were starting to set up. We've got some more pictures now, and I'm sure there even more will keep coming out. So that way, the ground is very clear about where you need to stand to maintain that distance from each other while in queue lines, whether it's queue lines to get in the park or tickets, or whether it's for a ride itself. And you can see in these pictures that the restaurants will have closed tables to keep social distancing as well. And a couple other things to note, there will be health QR codes that you'll need to even get in the parks over in China. And that's not something we've really seen here in the US yet. We don't have any kind of health QR code system. Of course, we don't even have great testing yet, so I suppose that's not the biggest surprise. Yeah. Another thing we've seen is that you will have to wear face masks while in there, with some exceptions, one of those being dining. If you're busy eating, obviously you don't have to wear a face mask, because that might make it a little hard to get the food in your mouth. There are also a number of attractions that won't be open. We don't have a specific list, but we do know that things like some of the children's play areas and some of the theater shows are going to be closed down, and there's some other things that will probably be closed too, whether it be normal maintenance for that matter, or because of COVID and maybe an excuse to do maintenance. Also, things that are not happening, there will be no touching of characters, at least early on. The characters won't be wearing masks, and so that means they're keeping the characters well away from the actual guests. So they'll be off at a distance and you'll be able to take pictures of them, but at least they'll still be in the parks. There's a few things that Disney is recommending guests are doing, but they don't sound like they're requirements. That includes asking the guests use hand sanitizer at the exit of every one of the rides. It also includes asking guests not to touch merchandise unless they are sure they're buying it, and to use contactless payment. Now, the contactless payment is something we've seen elsewhere over in China and some of the other parks that have opened already, and there it's actually a requirement in some of those parks, not an option. And here in Disneyland, it seems that it will be a recommended option, but not required. Now, contactless payment is much more advanced over in China than it is here inside the United States currently, so we probably won't expect to see the same requirements or even strong recommendations here yet. Not until our systems advance a bit further. So Shanghai Disneyland is opening Monday. You ask, what about the tickets? Well, they opened up the tickets a little bit earlier this week, and the tickets for Monday sold out in minutes. And the rest of the opening week is sold out now too. So no luck getting in there if you happen to be in China. You'll have to wait. And with the greatly reduced capacity, this is probably not the biggest surprise out there. One other thing we definitely heard from this is that Disney is really looking at this as a blueprint for the rest of the world and how they will go ahead and work the other parks. This was something they said during an earnings call recently, which is also where those quotes from Bob Chapek came from. CEO Bob Chapek, that is. Now, if we want to try to get any kind of an idea on a timeline, now this is super rough, but over for Shanghai Disneyland, the stores and restaurants opened in early March, and now as we're getting to mid-May, the park itself is going to go ahead and open. So we can look at a minimum of, say, 2.5 months between that early portion and getting there. But that depends on a lot of things. It depends on what's going on from the government perspective, how the virus is doing there, what kind of systems are in place to actually fight. So it's hard to put an exact number on what will happen elsewhere in the world, given those considerations. But we can figure probably 2.5 months at a minimum, let's say. Now, it's pretty cool to finally have a park reopening. That's just nice to actually be able to see on the horizon. What does it mean for the rest of the world? Well, let's segue off of that direction to our next story. So this is going to be about the other Disney parks and their reopenings and what we've heard so far. So off to Disney Springs, where we have a lot of interesting new news. Over at Disney Springs, Walt Disney World, we know that Disney Springs will begin a phased reopening on May 20th. Now, there will be a limited number of stores and restaurants that will be open during that time, and probably more coming open as that phased reopening continues, but there's no official word on which ones yet. So we'll have to play that one by ear. I know I've heard some rumors about things going on in the background, but we'll leave those as rumors, and you can look them up if you like. We know Disney will be limiting the capacity of both Disney Springs itself and the parking lot's capacity. And I've got a nice quote for you here from Disney Springs Vice President Matt Simon. Disney Springs will begin to reopen in a way that incorporates enhanced safety measures, including increased cleaning procedures, the use of appropriate face coverings by both cast members and guests, limited contact guest services, and additional safety training for cast members. Nothing super surprising in anything that Matt Simon said right there. Couple other quick notes. The hotels will still be closed, all the Disney hotels in the area, so you don't expect those to pop back open. And really, there are a lot of details still left to be seen, and Disney has said that they will be sharing more of those as we get closer to that opening on May 20th. Well, what about Walt Disney World itself as the parks? We got an interesting development where we saw that Disney World sent out a survey to a number of its guests that have June or July reservations. They asked different questions in that survey, like, are you more or less likely to cancel a reservation based on this factor or that factor? What shows or rides would impact your decision the most? Looks like they're really trying to see if certain shows or rides they need to put more of a priority on keeping open, maybe? And also, what about your other activities? Are you likely to be able to feel safe going out to those anytime soon? So Walt Disney World put out a survey there, and that seems to put an indication that they're starting to work on getting closer to opening. Obviously, months away still. And one other piece here, we also had the Chief Medical Officer for Disney, Dr. Pamela Heimel, who put out a post, which, to be honest, the post is pretty vague and what we already know and can expect from what we've talked about here in Shanghai Disneyland, over in the Disney Springs opening, and what we've seen elsewhere. Things like Disney's working on phased reopenings. They'll be doing physical distancing and capacity measures. They're going to be doing cleanliness and sanitation, screening and prevention support, and cast training. All the things you expect. A couple interesting things, though, that might not have been talked about as much before are the fact that they're talking about using apps especially. So when you look at Disneyland and Walt Disney World, they each have big apps that are used. The Disneyland app and the My Disney Experience app for Walt Disney World, and they figure they'll use that to help control crowds and capacity. And then also they talked about virtual queues for Disneyland and Disney World, something that's recently been introduced more when it comes to Rise of the Resistance, so you actually had a boarding pass window to come back. So that looks like something they're looking at on a more widespread basis. Okay, so there you have it. There's a whole bunch of different interesting and positive news about Disney opening back up. Now, inside the US, we currently still have a great problem in terms of testing. And that could increase the wait times we have until the parks reopen, as testing is very, very important in terms of being able to feel safe going to a park and in terms of actually being safe going to parks. That's why we don't have that health QR system like China does right now, where they have a QR code that you get to show based on how recently you're tested or if you've recovered from coronavirus. That way you show green, look, I'm safe, or different colors if that's not the case. Will we have something like that here? Well, time will tell, so we don't have anything yet, but we'll wait and see. At any rate, there's not any news about Disneyland reopening yet. There's certainly rumors and discussion about them putting plans together, but we expect that. But we don't have any actual news about when any of that might happen. So hey, the world goes on, and Disney will finally be reopening one of its parks over in Shanghai Disneyland. If you're lucky enough to be one of those few over going to Shanghai Disneyland on Monday, enjoy your Disney and have a magical day while you're there, that's for sure. Well, let's move on. Everyone's favorite section, right? It's time for the lightning round. So we got a few quick headlines of bigger stories. First off, Disney is foregoing its semi-annual July dividend payment. Now, this is the first time this has happened in 40 years and will save Disney about $1.6 billion. Wow. There is limited construction resuming on Disney World property. Now, this isn't Disney itself, but actually a couple other non-Disney owned hotels and McDonald's that are continuing construction now. Disney's first quarter profits fell 91% in 2020. The Parks, Experiences, and Products branch of Disney had a $1.4 billion loss in those 3 months. And Disney expects to keep having losses throughout the rest of the year. The massively successful Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order has been confirmed to be the first entry of a new franchise. It's been hugely successful with 10 million players in the first 6 months and even earned awards for Best Game from NME Awards. Players can look forward to a lot more Star Wars in the same thematic area. We've got a new Disney Plus series coming at some point in the future, as development has started on a new National Treasure TV series. Now, apparently with the same concept, but a younger cast. So you can be looking forward to both a new movie and a new show coming soon if you're a big National Treasure fan. We've got another piece of Mandalorian Season 2 casting information, because Temuera Morrison is going to be in it. Now, if that name doesn't mean anything to you, he's the one who played Jango Fett back in Attack of the Clones. So this means he's coming into Mandalorian Season 2 as Boba Fett. Now that's definitely some exciting news. Can't wait to see that. And finally, for the lightning round, we found out about a new Star Wars movie coming up. We don't know when this one's going to be, but apparently Taika Waititi is going to be directing and co-writing a new movie. We know little more about it other than who the other co-writer is. Now that other co-writer is Christy Wilson Cairns. who wrote 1917 just recently. Very successful war movie. And intriguingly, it makes her only the second woman to co-write a Star Wars movie, as Leigh Brackett was the other way back on Empire Strikes Back. More Star Wars movies, always good news. Can't wait to hear more about it as we get closer. And, well, there you have it, everyone. That's another week completed and part of history now. So what about you? Does hearing about Shanghai Disneyland reopening excite you? Are you still too worried to really be excited? Well, let me know down below in the comments. And thanks for watching, everyone. If you liked the video, please give it a like and share it with your friends. And I'll be back tomorrow with another new video. If you haven't done it yet, click that subscribe button and ring the bell. And as always, everyone, have a magical day. And may the Force be with you always.